You're comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man from Alameda, California, and New Jersey. I got a guest from New Jersey under kind of sad circumstances. An American icon passed today, the great Yogi Berra. And for those of you who are not baseball fans, you know of Yogi Berra. He transcends sports. He transcends a guy you think of as an athlete. He was an athlete. He was a great athlete, a Hall of Fame catcher with the New York Yankees, and later managed, later coached. But fortunately or unfortunately, he's remembered more for some of the things that he said, which were some he said that he didn't say, as Yogi would have said. He says, some of the things I said, I didn't say. He was quite a personality, and my guest today worked as a volunteer, as a tour guide in his museum, Yogi's Museum in New Jersey. And his name is Darrell Berger, and I'm welcoming him to the Comfortably Zoned radio microphone for the first time. Under trying circumstances again, we lost our hero, at least one of them. Darrell, what do you hear? What do you say?
Well, thanks for having me on, Ralph. I led tours through the Yogi Museum in Little Falls, New Jersey for many years. It was a lot of fun. The tour of the museum basically described Yogi's life. He was born in 1925, grew up poor in St. Louis, signed a contract and went down to Class D ball. His first year was then drafted into World War II. Saw action on D-Day at a very young age. Of course, became a great catcher with the Yankees and manager.
He won a Purple Heart. Let's not just action.
That's right.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he often attributed the success in his career amongst the people he would thank would be his commanding officer in the LST that he landed on D-Day, or he was actually offshore in D-Day, firing rockets into the German lines, and it was his commanding officer who told him to duck at the appropriate time. Yogi ducked, and he was still with us to survive D-Day and to have the career that he had.
He did have a terrific career. But he was loved in a different way than most athletes. You didn't have to be a Yankee fan or later a Met fan to love Yogi. Everybody loved Yogi. What was the one thing about him that he had this common denominator with humanity, with the rest of us, with we mere mortals? Mere mortals.
Well,
play baseball.
If I could sum that up, and I'm not the only person who says this, Yogi Berra was the most unaffected, famous person you would ever meet. If you were me, he was aware that he was Yogi Berra, and he was aware of what he had done and his place in the game and in American culture. But with his awareness, he was completely unaffected. I won't say he was necessarily humble, because he knew I once asked him, Yogi, what would you have done if you wouldn't play baseball? And he said, well, I think I probably would have paid the houses or something, but I would have owned the company.
And, if it ain't bragging, he's right, because he was an incredible financial whiz. He was totally uneducated. I think he had like an 8th grade education. But he had a nose for money, and he invested early on in his Yankee career in the 50s. He invested in a chocolate company, a chocolate drink company called Yoo-Hoo.
Which is still around. Yeah, he was a spokesman for Yoo-Hoo, and he used to pass out Yoo-Hoo T-shirts in the Yankee clubhouse. So then you would interview Mickey Mantle, and the next day picture would be on all over the country wearing a Yoo-Hoo T-shirt. And Mantle, who was not exactly financial whiz, realized 20 years later all the free publicity Yogi got for his company while passing out those free T-shirts. He had equity in the company. He wasn't just an employee of the company. And because of that, Yogi Berra was actually at an international soft drink conference in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. So he was actually in Dallas the day Kennedy was shot.
Whoa. I never heard that before. That is very interesting. But, of course, they held him for questioning and immediately released him.
That's a great line. That is a great line.
It's the best I could do. It's early in California.
Oh man, that's quick. That's very quick.
That's as good as I get, you know. I ought to. Go ahead. That's enough of that.
The other thing about Yogi that helps people understand it is that they built a museum for him and a learning center in his hometown while he was still alive. They knew what a national treasure he was and knew that there was absolutely no chance that Yogi would do anything to tarnish his image. And he reveled in the museum. He was often there when I would tour. And what I realized is that if you asked him something, he'd be happy to talk and converse with you. So when I would drive over to the museum, I would try to think of a question that would be interesting to him, that would engage him, that he hadn't been asked 1,000 times before. And I had a lot of fun with some of those questions.
Quiz me. Was Garagiola, who really made Yogi-isms famous in his book, Baseball's a Funny Game. I mean, this was way before Ball 4. This was when baseball literature, me growing up as a kid, realistic baseball literature that was entertaining was hard to find. That you get something, get an insight. Was his portrayal of Yogi any different than you saw Yogi all those years later? Because that was way back in the 50s, and he had a lot of years under his belt by the time the museum days came around, and he had some ups and downs with management, with Steinbrenner, all that stuff, the well-documented stuff. Did it change him as a human being from the way Garagiola described him and the way people talked to you about him that knew him back then?
No, again, that was one of the remarkable things about him, that he stayed so unchanged and unaffected. He and Garagiola grew up across the street from each other in the Hill section of St. Louis. They were best friends their entire lives. And I will say, though, that Garagiola, of course, developed a career as a commentator. He did dog shows for years. He was a bit of a raconteur and a comedian. And he did put a lot of work.
It was nice that he had something after the years of spiking Jackie Robinson. He had something.
That's right. But a lot of the things that Yogi said that he didn't say were said by Joe Garagiola. And Dave Kaplan, who is the executive director of the Yogi Museum, has had quite a job over the years separating the true Yogiisms from the pseudo Yogiisms. That
is an interesting job.
Here's the way that I think you can tell. If it makes a kind of sense, but you don't know what it is, it's probably a real Yogiism. If it just sounds silly or stupid, it's not. Because
it's not. No, he was not silly. He was not stupid. He would say things like, "You got to listen to hear."
That's right. Yeah, we make a lot of wrong mistakes today, and if I'm not in a slump, I'm just not hitting. The way I explained it, I explained this especially to the kids, because this is something that he had in common with my father, though my father did not have the sort of convoluted logic that Yogi had. But what they both shared was they had a gallon worth of intelligence that they were trying to pour into a quart's worth of vocabulary.
That's a very, very profound statement.
That if you know that, because you can almost always say, once you understand the gist of what Yogi's getting at, you can almost always recast what he had to say by using 4 or 5 times the number of words. For instance, I'm not in the slump, I'm just not hitting.
Right.
What he's
When you come to a fork in the road, take it.
Oh yeah, I can tell you about that too. The fork in the road. He used to live on a road that seemed to fork, but in fact it wasn't a fork. It was an island in the road, and so the road came back together, and then you got to his house. So what he meant to say was, when you come to what appears to be a fork in the road, it doesn't matter which fork you take, because it'll come back and lead you to my house.
Oh, wow. Hey, Daryl, that's 2 that I'm really enlightened by. Wow.
And
and
there's all sorts of things like that. Well, you know where the origin of it gets laid early.
Well, I do, because I happen to have grown up almost in Yankee Stadium. I saw so many games.
Sure.
The shadows would come.
Especially in October, as the sun was lower in the sky, it would start blinding the left fielder in Yankee Stadium virtually for the whole game. During the regular season, it would blind him only maybe in the later innings. And this was an advantage that Yankee left fielders had, unless you're Norm Seaburn in 1958.
I was just going to refer to him exactly. Yeah. He was absolutely, under better circumstances, a pretty good ball player, but he lost it a lot in that sun, in that in Yankee Stadium. And he was the prototype.
And Casey ended up putting Elston Howard out in left field, and there's a famous photo of Elston down on his knees making a catch in the outfield. And it's not because Elston Howard was a gazelle and he was doing around Swoboda. He was fighting the sun. And unlike Seaburn, he fought the sun, and Howard won. And that was one of the turning points in this series.
Well, let me give you a little bit of trivia. In 1960, when they were playing the Pirates in the World Series, and Tony Kubek got hit in the throat in the late innings. And generally, what would have happened in the game had Casey been alert, as he was on occasion during the year, he would generally, late innings, put Joe DeMaestri at short and put Kubek, who had been playing short, in left. Uh-huh. He froze. He did not do that in that game. Kubek, fielding a ground ball that hits a rock, comes up, hits him in the throat, extends the series. Ultimately, I think it was that move that cost him his job, because they could not have fired him had they won the World Series. It would have just been...
It was Yogi's home run that put the Yankees ahead, that if they could have held on to that lead, we would have thought, and Yogi came through in the clutch again, winning the World Series for the Yankees.
Right. And to get back to playing left field, he played a pretty competent left field on occasion.
Yes.
And he started out as a right fielder, and he was a pretty good right fielder, and Dickey taught him how to catch. Did Dickey teach him all that much? What was did he talk about that?
Well, I know from other sources, first of all, Yogi was a gifted athlete. He had very quick reflexes. He was one of the fastest runners on the Yankees, and he had tremendous bat control and bat speed and so forth, and really took advantage of that short porch in right field. But yes, as Yogi said, Bill Dickey taught him all his experience. He had struggled in the 47 World Series with his mechanics and with his throwing. And then Casey came on board. And this is very key. This is very key because Casey saw the athlete that he had, and he just needed to be tutored. And back then, you didn't get a lot of on-the-job training in the major league. Players played a lot more before they got to the majors. They stayed in the minors a lot more. So
absolutely,
people don't understand that bringing in a former all-star catcher to tutor Yogi was not business as usual back then. That was quite innovative, and it worked. And the other thing, when you think about it, as good a hitter as Yogi was, if he had been a corner outfielder and even a decent or above average outfielder, he probably wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. 350 home runs and so forth for a left or right fielder is outstanding, but it's Del Ennis, it's Hank Sauer. It's not Hall of Fame. And so Yogi understood that, or Casey understood that if you could get that kind of bat behind the plate, it would be a tremendous advantage when most teams did not have pitchers who could hit at all.
How did he compare with Campanella as a defensive catcher after all that instruction?
I couldn't tell you, Ralph. I first started watching games in '58, and so that was after Campanella's career, and the defensive statistics that we have even to this day for catchers are all but meaningless. So you'd have to find somebody a little older than I to do that.
Hey, when Jackie Robinson slid into the home plate, was he? I think it was 53, if I'm not mistaken. In the war, was he safe or out?
That's where that would be a call that would go up to be decided by the slow motion cameras today. There's not a. I've looked at that a million times, and it's about as bang bang a play as possible. But I'll tell you this: if Yogi had last words, it might very well have been Robinson was out.
Oh, he stuck to it all his life. I mean,
it became a joke. It became a joke with Yogi because he always, to his literally to his dying day, he insisted that Robinson was out on that.
Well, I have a great story along those lines. He'd run into Rachel Robinson every now and again, and Rachel would say safe, and he'd go out, and that's all they. Exactly. That was their greeting.
Exactly. Which reminds me, we ought to. Another reason why Yogi had his own museum was that not only was he a great ball player and a great athlete and a good man, he was a great husband and a great father and a great member of his community. And a great
breeder of athletes. He had Dale Berra, who played in the majors, and Tim, his other son, was a Baltimore Colt for a short period of time, but longer than you or I played for the Colts.
That's right. Yeah, and his granddaughter is a sports writer.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
sports what? I'm sorry, I just didn't hear that.
A sports writer. She does sports writing. I don't know exactly where she's been played, but I see one of her articles every once in a while. She is the daughter of Lawrence Berra Jr., his first son, who was not a professional athlete.
Right.
But who looks the most like Yogi.
And I think he was most instrumental in the museum, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's correct. So the one who played baseball was there a lot. There was a little shop there that sold Yankee memorabilia and different books and so forth. It's really a great organization, and Dave Kaplan, the executive director, who used to be a sports writer at Newsday, is just the perfect guy for it. He loved Yogi. He knows baseball as well as anybody I know, and he has.
How was Yogi with the kids? Were they intimidated by him, or did he just get down with them?
It's interesting because the kids, they kind of knew this guy was supposed to be some athlete, but none of them had ever seen him, and so forth. But until the last few years, when he would be with the kids, he would just win them over the way he won everybody over. He was just a completely genuine, good guy, and it was it's like the grandfather, So he was really good with everybody.
any stories about Yogi's Mets days that he told, or that he was the I got to tell you, he was the manager in '73 when my favorite Met team took the field, and they didn't win it all, but they came back from a lot of injuries and a lot of problems, and they got to the World Series. And I got to see Game 6 out in Oakland, which was really cool. Their losing notwithstanding. But there were some times with the Mets. Here, I got to tell you the story. Gil Hodges passes away in 1971, and he was the manager of the Mets, and Yogi was a coach. The Mets pulled one of the least classy moves I've ever heard in the entire baseball world, and I've been following it a long time, and I read a lot. They announced Yogi's hiring as manager at Gil's funeral.
Wow.
They figured they had, right? They had everybody there. They were going to just save the lunch and not have to call a press conference in the morning. It was absolutely, it was an I'm an original Met fan. It was embarrassing to the point where I wanted to play out my option. It was.
Well, that reminds me of the way Yogi was fired from manager of the Yankees in 1985, 16 games into the season by some typewriter subordinate. And the one thing that could get Yogi angry was he disrespected. Because of the way he looked and the way he talked and his size and his background, he worked hard for the respect and dignity that he had. It wasn't something that was bestowed upon him because of his place and his appearance, to say the very least. And when people, he did feel disrespected, he could be angry and he could hold a grudge. And, I don't think anybody ever blamed him for that.
Yeah. Well, you've been terrific. I mean, you gave me an insight to Yogi and give us all, my entire audio, all 7 of you out there. They keep clicking on the thing over and over again, same people. But a tremendous insight into Yogi. I'm thrilled that I had you there. Been your Facebook friend. We have this crazed interest. Let's recommend our favorite Facebook page of all, where I got to know you a little bit. If anybody out there on Facebook, go. What's the name of the page, Dara? It's the.
I think it's just called Baseball in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah. Okay. Baseball history or something. 50s, 60s, 70s.
If you search for some combination of that stuff, I'm sure it would come up.
Absolutely will, and it's a tremendous site, and I really enjoy it. It's run by Jeffrey Leonard, not the hackman Jeffrey Leonard, the intelligent Jeffrey Leonard, and not that Hackman wasn't, the intelligent, well-spoken Jeffrey Leonard, who just runs a terrific site and gives us, we baseball fanatics, a chance to communicate with each other and talk about these things. And but this was tremendous. I hope you'll come back to the show.
Well, that would be great. I really enjoyed it too, Ralph. It's nice talking to you. And yes, just send me a message when some other topics come around, and we'll do this again for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm going to end the show the same way I do every one. I will implore you, Daryl, to keep your dreams wet and your humor dry. Keep your kids out of military recruiting stations, especially the one in Bayonne, New Jersey. That's where you're from, right? Good.
Most
you got
good,
kids?
Yeah.
By the way, not Bayonne. You're in Jersey City. I have roots
in Jersey
Bayonne.
City.
Yeah, you're right near Bayonne. Did you ever take the 20 bus from New York into Jersey through the tubes into Jersey City?
No, I live just a couple of blocks from the past subway, So whenever I go to the city, it's very convenient for me to just take the path wherever I want to go.
Beautiful. But I have great memories of Bayonne and New York itself. You could take the boy out of New York, but you can't take or whatever it is. You can take the boy out of New York, but you got to be careful of the Mann Act. I'll tell you that.
That's right.
Right. So let me continue. Keep your kids away from military recruiters wherever you live, because they'll change your family for the worse. You don't want your kid to be fodder. You got wars going on that aren't really your family's responsibility. Let's face it. So try to do the best not to support that. Spread that word. Keep your kids off the laps of clerics that wear dresses, and keep on keeping on. Thanks again, Darryl. Have a great one.
You too. Bye for now.
Bye.